Okay, we back in the Midnight School of Higher Learning. What we're going to talk about in tonight's tape is go a little bit deeper and get some more insight on the keys and some of the attributes needed for leadership when you yourself are about to enter the promised land and when you are leading a particular group of people into the promised land. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about. And we visited that topic a little bit yesterday when we talked about the Shemitic Israelites when they entered into Jericho and they had, warfare with various Hamitic tribes. We talked about the type of, military mind games that Joshua was playing, creating intelligence agencies to, send people in to gather information. And they met the harlot, and she helped them with certain information, etc. But as I said in one of the prior tapes, you're not going to just go into the promised land and people got the doors open. They got their arms out. They handing you bags of money. It's not going to work like that. You're going to have to go in. It's going to be a lot of competition for resources, competition for land, financial opportunity, etc. So you're going to have to be on your P's and Q's, and you're going to have to be in the mindset of the ultimate chess player. A lot of times you'll hear brothers, use the analogy of life and chess, being the same, being able to make choices, see 2 or 3 steps ahead, and be able to think in the third dimensional frame of mind. All right. So that means you can see the height, you can see the width, but more in particular, you can see the depth in things, because that's what we think about when we think about 3D. You think about height, width, and depth. So you can see the nuanced details and the depth of something. Somebody may see only the 2-dimensional perspective of it, but you can see the real reason behind the image, the depth of it, the core of it, the nucleus of it. All right. So there is a certain wisdom and knowledge that comes with being a king or an emperor or a leader or a servant of the people, because that's ultimately what the king or the emperor is. He's a servant of the people. All right. He's serving the people's interest, and he's serving the higher power's interest first. All right. That's another thing, when you're in the position of the king, the emperor, or the leader, you have to make sure that the Most High or the higher power is your number one priority, and whatever the higher power's blueprint is and objectives, that you make sure that those will be, met first. Because a lot of the times the people will try to sway you to, be in the lower self and do things that'll just please them. But later on down the line, it could hurt the entire nation as a whole. So understand, as a king and as a leader or an emperor, you have to make a lot of hard decisions. But as long as you keep the higher power first and the guidance and the knowledge and wisdom and understanding that you've gotten from your own, life experiences, you'll be good to go. And just never let the people influence you. All right. That's just a very, very important thing to, remember. So what I'm going to do is we're going to read in Numbers chapter 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And it's some very, very important events that happened with Moses, who is the servant or the leader at this time, while the Shemitic Israelites are in Egypt, or in particular, the exodus out of Egypt, in the wilderness of Egypt. All right. Now, in this wilderness stage, this is when the people don't have a culture. People don't have a solid way to identify with each other. The people don't necessarily know what their purpose is. All right. So you talking to somebody in the, the raw stage, the beginning stage. That's what the people are like in the wilderness. You see a lot of ignorance. You see a lot of poor choices made, a lot of, nagging and complaining, a lot of murmuring. A lot of that is going on. So when you're in the wilderness, or you're in that stage where the people are collectively in the lower self, this is going to be a very, very tough time and a trial and tribulation for the leader. This is why when you read in the story of Exodus, that when Moses found out that his ethnic national background was Shemitic Israelite, and he wasn't a Hamitic Egyptian like you thought, then everything changed. And one of the things he had to do was go and live amongst, some of the people outside of Egypt. And he had to be a shepherd for a few years. And this is symbolic when you see any, old literature or old history, and you hear about a man being a shepherd. All right. A lot of the times that's being a symbol for being a leader. Just think about how the shepherd has to lead the sheep. And a lot of times the, sheep or whatever the flock is symbolic of the people. all right, the entire nation. So a lot of times when they talk about the children of Israel, the prophet or the leader, they'll be the one that's, playing the role as the shepherd. So this is why Moses was a shepherd all those years. And this is also why David was a shepherd. He had the situation where he had to kill the wild beast. He was also attending his flock when he got news of Goliath and went to fight Goliath. So understand that as a leader, you're going to have that point in your life where you'll go through your shepherd stage. It'll be a stage where it'll seem like nothing's going on, but you having to serve a lot. That's pretty much just preparing you for a future role you're going to have to do and serve at a larger, in a larger way. So I'm also going to read in, before we go into the Bible, I'm going to read in 48 Laws of Power, and we'll get a little bit of a Machiavellian prelude. All right. This is law number 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Everyone understands the need for change in the abstract, but on the day-to-day level, people are creatures of habit. Too much innovation is traumatic and will lead to revolt. If you are new to a position of power or an outsider trying to build a power base, make a show of respecting the old way of doing things. If change is necessary, make it feel like a gentle improvement on the past. Now, the reason why we going into this is because you got to remember when the Shemitic Israelites were leaving Egypt, they were used to the luxuries and the lifestyle that they had in Egypt, although they were a servant class people. So it's just like how the so-called blacks are living in the United States today. They know that this change needed. They know that we need to get a, ethnic cultural base amongst each other and set up real financial institutions and work with each other. We know we need to do these things, but we despise change. We despise putting in the work that's necessary and needed. So it's a lot of procrastination going on. It's a lot of laziness going on. And that's one of the big problems with, so-called blacks of today. And it was a big problem with the Shemitic Israelites while they were in the wilderness. When they had to go through that trial and tribulation of setting up their own empire, it wasn't going to be easy. But a lot of people started complaining and wanting to even go back to Egypt and be servants. So it gets so deep to where as a leader, you have to already know the mindset of the people and how low they can go and be willing to already play these games, these military mind games, even with your own people to make sure that they're thinking a certain way. So sometimes do you have to send propaganda to your own people just to make sure they're thinking the right way? Yes, you do. You do that, and then you'll do it by force as well. All right. So let's get a little bit more. Keys to power. Quote, this is a quote from Machiavelli. All right. It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. Okay. Human psychology contains many dualities, one of them being that even while people understand the need for change, knowing how important it is for institutions and individuals to be occasionally renewed, they are also irritated and upset by changes that affect them personally. They know that change is necessary, that novelty provides relief from boredom, but deep inside they cling to the past. Change in the abstract or superficial change they desire, but a change that upsets core habits and routines is deeply disturbing to them. No revolution has gone without a powerful later reaction against it, for in the long run, the void it creates proves too unsettling to the human animal, who unconsciously associates such voids with death and chaos. The opportunity for change and renewal seduces people to the side of revolution, but once their enthusiasm fades, which it will, they are left with a certain emptiness. Yearning for the past, they create an opening for it to creep back in. For Machiavelli, the prophet who preaches and brings change can only survive by taking up arms. When the masses inevitably yearns for the past, he must be ready to use force. But the armed prophet cannot last long unless he quickly creates a new set of values and rituals to replace the old ones and to soothe the anxieties of those who dread change. It is far easier and less bloody to play a kind of con game. Preach change as much as you like, and even enact your reforms, but give them the comforting appearance of older events and traditions. So what we have right here is a Machiavellian principle that you're going to find out Moses is going to use. So we're going to look into the history in the book of Numbers, and we're going to see Moses use these Machiavellian tactics against the Shemitic Israelites. And a lot of it is going to be to cleanse and wipe out a lot of the complainers and the murmurers and a lot of the weak-seated Israelites who the Most High did not want to make it into the promised land. So you got to remember that just like today's so-called blacks, they despise that change. And anybody that were to come to them that starts, talking about change, as Machiavelli says, only will survive by taking up arms. OK. So just keep some of this in mind, and when Machiavelli talks about, the prophet who preaches and brings about change, this is a good segue into Moses. OK. So, we could use Moses as the example of that prophet or that leader. All right. And then it says here, it is far easier and less bloody to play a kind of con game. So when I say, you using deception, like how Jacob/Israel did against his father to get the, inheritance, these are the military mind games that must be played. So now that we're done with the prelude, as I said, we're going to read in Numbers chapter 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. We'll skip around to the important parts. We'll talk about the history of the blue ribbon and fringes of the Shemitic Israelites, which just is a memory of the covenant or the agreement, and is also a symbol of them establishing culture. So when you see, Shemitic Israelites, real ones, the melanated ones or the indigenous ones around the world, because we're scattered about, but you'll see us sometimes wearing the fringes on our different garments, and you'll see us being adorned in the colors of white and royal blue or white and blue. All right. So some of that is, the reason why you'll see that associated with the so-called United Kingdom and the so-called United States. All right, that white and royal blue being associated with the ancient Shemitic Israelites. All right, we're going to talk about the burden of being a leader and the murmuring of the people, military intelligence established by Moses, fear being the number one dream killer. All right, so fear of entering the promised land. And, some of the intelligence agents came back and spreaded fear amongst the people. And also, the weak-seated generations dying out in the wilderness. All right. So we'll talk about these, various subjects and topics. All right. Get something to drink real quick. All right, let's start. Starting in chapter 11 of Numbers. Now, what we're doing is we're going to just read through, I know it's going to be a lot of reading, a lot of words, but we want to just connect it to our point of just certain things that the leader must be aware of. And although Moses, the character historically, at least, written about in the Bible, this was a larger scale, but let's take these same attributes and apply them to ourselves as men today, going into 2022, looking for success, ready for success, and about to receive success. And when the people complained, all right, so the people that it's talking about are the people of Israel, the ones that Moses is trying to lead into the promised land, aka the so-called blacks that are your family and friends, the ones that you care about and that you're trying to lead to the promised land, the ones that you're responsible for and got to be a servant to. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses. And when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. So you're going to see right here in Numbers, a lot of the times where the higher power is going to become very, very angry with the people because of their complaining and murmuring. And knowing that things take a process to manifest even in the material world. So when he's working with the material world, although the Most High or the high power is a spirit, it understands that things have to process itself in the physical world. So it wants us to, as well. So when we get impatient and stuff like that, it can anger the higher power, and that's written and recorded by these, these men that wrote the Bible. Okay, so through their knowledge and wisdom, this is something that obviously they've experienced and learned about in their own lives as well. Let's continue. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. He's talking about the people of Israel. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the flesh, which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills and beat it in a mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. So the manna seeds were falling upon, the camp's ground at night. And the people were using this, of course, make a meal or a flour out of, and they would make it into a cake. And this is what they was using as, nourishment while they were in the wilderness. But while they were in the wilderness, they remember all the good food and flesh that they were eating and gorging upon when they were living in Egypt. So now that they had to leave Egypt, leave slavery, leave being a zero, now it's time to pipe up and become a hero. Yeah, it's going to be some sacrifice. You got to get off some of the glorious experiences you had being a fucking slave. But the children of Israel was bitching and moaning and complaining, saying, man, we want to go back. We remember how good those cucumbers were, the melons were, the garlic, the leek, the different meats that we used to eat in Egypt. So they were complaining, even though they were getting a freedom. So understand that the process that's going to be needed to go through, the wilderness to get to the promised land, some of the people close to you not going to like it. So, for example, some of you brothers, you may be in a so-called relationship with a woman, and you all got a big plan and a certain type of lifestyle that you all got for you ourselves, to live in, let's say, 5 to 10 years. But right now, you may have to save certain type of money. People may have to work certain type of hours. Maybe the woman don't get certain type of attention because the man is focused at this point. So a lot of you brothers are going to deal with these women who going to still irritate you, yet they going to want that promised, lifestyle in 5 to 10 years of comfort. But even in the now, they're going to fake like they understand the sacrifice needed, but they're going to still bitch and moan and complain and murmur. All right, let's go. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. So what was going on is Moses is walking through the camp, and he's meditating within his own soul. The Most High is giving him the word at the same time, and he hearing niggas in their tents crying and shit. Bitches in there whining and complaining about how good it was when they was in Egypt, and everybody with the frowny face. And he thinking to himself, wait a minute, I just did all this stuff to get us out of here, went to war with the Egyptians. The higher power, crossed us, over the Red Sea. And here we are going through, what we need to go through to get to the promised land. And y'all motherfuckers sitting here crying. So this is what Moses is thinking to himself. So he was displeased. And the higher power was displeased as well with the people crying. And it says, and Moses said unto the Lord, wherefore, why hast thou afflicted thy servant? And why have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? So right now we're about to see Moses express some of his grief of all the burden he's having to deal with from, trying to carry all these people, get across the Red Sea, try to figure out resources, try to figure out the military defense of the people. This is a lot to try to figure out at one time. So I don't give a fuck who you are as a man, or how strong you are, or how tall you are, or how big you are, or how many guns you got, or how much money in your checking and savings account, how many street niggas you know, how many shooters you got. Being the leader is going to always come with certain burdens. And part of that is you have to share the burdens that the higher power has dealing with creation as a whole. All right. And that's something very, very intimate that you'll, experience more and more and more. But your heart will start to receive what the heart of the higher power is dealing with. Okay. So Moses was expressing his, his discomfort. Let's see what he was saying. Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that thou shouldst say unto me, carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father bear the suckling child, unto the land which thou sware unto their fathers? Why should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people alone, because it is too heavy for me. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand, if I have not favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. So back right here, Moses pretty much saying, look, these people asking for food, this shit really is getting a little heavy, and he's just pretty much just keeping it 100 with the higher power and letting them know, like, look, bro, this thing getting heavy on me down here. I'm rocking with you, but it's almost as if you ain't, do you see me in favor? Like, why did you put all this on me like this? So Moses was just, he was just expressing how he was feeling. And the Lord said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the spirit which is upon thee, and I will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone. So right here, the high power is telling Moses pretty much, okay, I hear you crying out to me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take of your spirit and of your energy, of your inspiration, and I'm going to share that with the elders and the men that he told him to gather up. He told him to gather up 70 men of the elders of the people. All right. He gathered these men up to come to the, tabernacle. And then the higher power, through knowledge and understanding, dealt with them. All right. And now some of this burden was shared. So you brothers are going to have a little coalition or a confederation of people, of other brothers you dealing with on this journey. It's not a one man thing. All right. It's not a one man thing at all. All right. So where I want to go next? Let's see. Now, y'all remember when all the people was bitching and moaning and complaining, and you remember this kindled, the anger of the higher power and Moses. So the higher power had a response to the people for all this complaining. They kept saying they want flesh. They tired of eating the manna. So let's see what the, higher power's natural response was to them. And Moses gat him into the camp, he and the elders of Israel. And there went forth a wind from the Lord, and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, as it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. And the people stood up all that day, and all that night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered at least 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round the camp. So what happened is the higher power brought, some quails, some birds, and, they all fell down, and the people was like, oh man, finally some type of meat or flesh. So they were just gathering out. They were in their carnal self. And it said that they were out there all day, all night, and even all the next day, just gathering up as many quails as they can so they could just try to gorge and eat and cook the flesh. And this was showing really how they were so deep in their lower self, and they still weren't understanding the process of coming out and being in the wilderness and what that's about. Just like how Moses had to go and be in ultimately his wilderness as a shepherd. See, a lot of the times being in the wilderness is to cleanse you from being, used to the gluttony of Babylon. When you living as a servant, for a certain kingdom that's foreign to you, there are certain perks come with being a fucking slave, as weird as that sound. And unfortunately, some people fall in love with that. And you see a lot of so-called black people fall in love with it today. They know that the situation overall isn't good, but as long as they getting their $50,000 a year, they $80,000 a year, they got their Lexus, they can go to their AKA meeting or whatever it is they doing, their Christmas, party, and wear they fancy clothes, you know what I'm saying, or whatever it is, and everything is good. So understand that, the higher power just sees all this, and as it says, it kindles his anger, all right? And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. So what happened is the people tried to gather up all that flesh and the quail to eat, and the higher power basically came through and, and turned their TV off, okay? Sent the plague on the people, and they all died. So understand that, yes, the higher power does kill. The higher power will be on some murder shit. Yeah, he'll murk some shit, So understand that that's part of that, And when it's talking about the wrath of the Lord, that's ultimately what it's talking about. It's talking about mass death or even, particular death of somebody getting singled out and these angels of punishment being sent upon you. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about real quick is, how a lot of you brothers, they come at y'all about the so-called, dating, quote unquote, marrying, or even, socially or sexually interacting with women from other ethnic national groups. That's not nothing new. Moses experienced that as well. Let's see what happened. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. All right. So in this situation, Moses, who being a Shemitic Israelite, descending from Shem, married an Ethiopian or a Cushite woman who descended from Ham. So these are both, indigenous people, aboriginal people, or, copper colored people, various shades of, natural earth tones. But because they didn't come from the same patriarchal lineage, Miriam and Aaron had an issue with it. All right. So in this situation, it was more of a cultural difference. So the woman that Moses was married to, she was a Cushite. So imagine, a woman that looked like she could have been Nipsey Hussle's sister. You know what I'm saying? Or how those different Eritreans and Ethiopians look. A lot of them are certain Cushite stock, and that's still over even in so-called Arabia and stuff like that. But nevertheless, they still are, indigenous people. All right. But there was an issue, with them because of that. And they said, has the Lord indeed spoke only by Moses? Has he not also spoken by us? And the Lord heard it. So what you're going to have is that although you the leader and the higher power has chosen to deal with you, because that's another thing. You can't choose to make yourself the leader. You'll know if you're the leader or not because your life just going to play out a certain way. And you'll naturally be a certain masculine archetype and prototype in your life. And it'll be the primary figure of masculinity. Okay. So it's not like you can make yourself, the leader. It's something that it has to naturally happen. All right. And you're going to have people complain about it and jealous of you and envious of you. OK, and that's ultimately what Miriam and Aaron had going on. And in this situation, ultimately, the higher power chastised Miriam for it, and she was made leprous. All right. And it says, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. So remember now, the Shemitic Israelites, they were a people of color. So they look just like how King James looks on this, picture in front of you. Copper colored people, bronze colored people, the different, complexions that so-called black people come in. That's how Aaron and Miriam looked. Okay. So when she was made leprous, it says right here, quote, Miriam became leprous, white as snow, meaning her skin tone or her physical complexion changed. All right. So that's how you know that when the Bible talks about leprosy, it's talking about a person of color changing into, the pale image. OK. All right. So I just wanted to, include that real quick. So next we're going to talk about the military intelligence set up by Moses. Chapter 13. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, send your men that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel, of every tribe of their fathers, shall you send a man, every one a ruler among them. And Moses, by the commandment of the higher power, sent them from the wilderness of Paran. All those men were heads of the children of Israel. And as you know, you have the 12 tribes, and there were men sent from each tribe to represent the tribe. These are the names of the men which Moses sent out of the land. And Moses called Oshea the son of Nun, Yehoshua. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwelt within, where they may be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be in, whether in tents or in strongholds, and what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be wood therein or not, and be you of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. So what's happening is Moses sent out his 12 spies, and he pretty much told the men, look, y'all go into Canaan, the promised land, but instead of us just bum rushing in there, I need y'all to get some intelligence and some information for me. Y'all go search out the land, see where the people live at, see what kind of defense they have, check the military out, see what kind of resources they have, see if the soil is good, bring back some fruit so we can taste it and see, what kind of crops can be grown there. In other words, he was checking everything out. And I want you to think about, the Gucci Man song, for my niggas back, 2008, 2009. On the Ice Attack 2, on that Bit Broke Records, you know what I'm saying? Dissing Bit Cat and all that. And Gucci was like, I know all your business and all your spots. Know how you move. Let's fire some shots. You see, in order to know all a nigga business, you got to have the spies over there. You got to have the intelligence agents over there. So that's what Moses was doing. He knew all their business and knew all their spots. He knew how they moved. So he was going to be eventually ready to fire some shots. You see? So he sent the spies up in there, got the intelligence. And then, of course, they brought it back. So let's continue. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rehob, as the man come to Hamath. And they ascended by the south and came unto Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. All right. So when they went, they saw some of the descendants of Anak, who were some of these other Hamitic tribes. And they were some very, very large men. All right. And they came unto the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they bare it between two upon a staff. And they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. The place was called the brook Eshcol, because of the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from thence. So it said right here that the children of Israel went through and they found, a garden of grapes, and they cut some down. And it said it took two grown men to carry one cluster of grapes. So historically, they're letting you know that during the time of the Shemitic Israelites entering Canaan, historically at this time in the earth, the fruits and the crops and the agriculture of the earth yielded much bigger fruit and vegetables than they do today. It said it took two men to carry the cluster of grapes and the pomegranates and the figs. So these were very, very large fruit. So that lets you know that there were, at this time, some very, very large people. All right, let's continue. And they returned from searching of the land after 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told them and said, We came unto the land where you sent us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. So they came back and they showed them the fruit. All right, so Moses and Aaron, they checking it out, they're getting the information. Because remember, brothers, you all need to check out some of these new financial sectors you're going to be in. Like some of these new neighborhoods y'all going to be living in. You know, you're going to be going to new places and stuff. Like, just have your intel and your information. Like, peep the scene. Figure out what's going on before you just start hopping in stuff because you got a sack now. Because you know when you got money now, you can start traveling and doing this and doing that. But make sure you get all your information before you just start doing moves. Remember, I know all your moves and all your spots. You see? So just keep that in mind. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of the Jordan. So these are all different, Hamitic tribes, and these are the people dwelling in the land, and these are the, the intelligence agents telling Moses this, all right? And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. Now listen up, y'all. But the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So what happened is after the spies came back, they told Moses, they told Aaron and Joshua and Caleb and the rest of the brothers, they said, look, y'all, here goes some of the fruit. It's some good land. Basically, it's some Hamitic tribes living over there, about 6 different Hamitic tribes. Some of them live in the south, some of them live in the east, yada, yada, yada. So Caleb and Joshua and some of them other young Israelites who had been in the wilderness, but see, they probably had never, you gotta remember, a lot of Israelites were born some of the Israelites was born in the wilderness. So they may have not even known the life in Egypt. All they knew was the wilderness. Just like so-called black people that's been born, let's say, in the last few generations. Yeah, we hear about this history of us ruling the Americas, having all the gold mines, ruling the pyramid in the mound complexes, ruling the Iroquois government, ruling the ancient Yamasee government in the southeast, ruling the United Kingdom as the ancient Celts, ancient Iberians, ancient Shemitic Israelites. We hear about all this great history of our people, but we so far removed from it, all we know is the wilderness. All we know is the darkness. All we know is that so-called label of being so-called black. So we so far removed from it that the young niggas, we hungry, we ready to get out this shit. We ready to get back to something new because we've never seen it. All we know is this shit. So Caleb and Joshua, that's how they were. They were younger than Moses and some of them older guys. So they had more of a, warrior spirit. They were ready to pipe up. They was ready to die for this shit. And that's why Moses took Caleb and Joshua under his wing and said, okay, I'm going to be able to trust them and be able to pass the baton down to them ultimately. So that's why you reading right here historically that Caleb, he was turned up and he was ready to go see what's up. But then them other spies, they got scared and they said, oh, wait a minute. Now there's some giants over there now. These dudes is big. They much bigger than us. As a matter of fact, we were literally like grasshoppers in their sight. And it says that those spies brought an evil report upon the land unto the children of Israel. And what this did is eventually it made the people get nervous. And the people start, getting scared and getting, furious and kind of cowarding out and start saying, man, we want to go back to Egypt. Remember, the people looking for any reason to go back to Egypt. So-called blacks, they looking for any reason to just go back to being communists, Marxists, libertarians, Luciferians, and just getting a job and just partying on Saturday and calling it a day and going to church on Sunday. They looking for any reason to go back to that. So when they heard that, yeah, man, the promised land is flowing with milk and honey, and yet a higher power is going to lead us here, but we got to go in there and conquer some shit. Oh, niggas don't want to hear that. They thought somebody was just going to give them something. No, fuck, nigga, ain't nobody about to give you nothing. You got to die for this shit. You got to shed blood for this shit. You got to jug, finesse, and deceive for this shit. Nigga, you have to get your hands bloody and dirty for this shit. What you willing to do? You understand? So let's go to chapter 14. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. So here go the people crying again. So they done heard, dang, the promised land got milk and honey, but now it's these giants over there, and more than likely they gonna kill us. So now the people get scared, and now they don't want to do it no more all of a sudden. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God want, or would God we had died in this wilderness? That's another thing too. Like some of this old English, I'm re-rocking it and putting it in current modern day, American nigga English. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. And where has the Lord brought us unto this land, to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said to one another, let us make a captain and let us return to Egypt. So here go the people bitching and complaining, murmuring, scared, saying, damn, Moses, like, why would the Most High lead us out here? Like, wouldn't it have been better for us to just either die in Egypt? So now they saying amongst each other, hey, y'all, you know how fuck niggas, they go into like a little corner and start whispering away from real niggas. You know how niggas be wanting to hang with the real people, but, they know they can't. So they kind of the cast out. So they go amongst themselves, like how Scar did in Lion King. You remember how Scar got kicked out of the kingdom and all his other lions, they looked at him like he was the fuck nigga. So he had to go out there basically in the darkness and in the woods. And now he got to hang with the hyenas and kind of, be confederate with them, and niggas is whispering behind bushes and, hey, y'all, let's do this, and hey, y'all, let's go over there and do that. And so that's what some of these Israelites started doing. So this is what they said. They said, let us make a captain and let us return to Egypt. So they was like, look, we're going to make our own captain. Fuck Aaron and fuck Moses, fuck Caleb and fuck Joshua, fuck God, and we finna just go back to Egypt. Then it says, then Aaron and Moses fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it, it is exceeding a good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land which floweth with milk and honey. O rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Caleb said, we finna eat these niggas. We finna destroy their shit. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear not them. But all the congregation bade stone them with stones. And the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. So what happened was Moses and Aaron, they just start trying to plead with the people. That's another thing. When you a leader and a servant, a lot of times you be having to humble yourself to fuck niggas. Yeah, that be part of it sometimes. Like they be part of the collective and the masses of the people. And in this situation, even though they was about to turn on Moses and Aaron still being a servant and still was, having to be humble at that time to the people. They trying to get the people to calm down and stuff. But Joshua and Caleb was like, man, fuck all that. Like, nah, y'all, look, it's good stuff over there, y'all. It's good fruit. It's good food. It's good land. You know what I'm saying? It's flowing with milk and honey. Y'all, we can do this. And he trying to inspire the people. And he trying to motivate the people. So then the higher power showed up, and ultimately the higher power was going to destroy the people for complaining, but Moses cried out and he prayed to the Most High not to do it, and the Most High decided not to do it. So then it says, now this is the higher power, talking now. It says, surely they shall not see the land which I swore unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me to see it. Or excuse me, it says, let me go back. It says, and the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. So, after Moses prayed to him, the Most High said, I'm going to calm down pretty much, and I'm not going to kill these murmuring, people. And it says, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have now hearkened to my voice. Surely they shall not see the land which I swore unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. So what's going to happen is that even though some of y'all may be so-called black people, even though some of y'all may descend from the Shemitic Israelites, and you may be part of the covenant, but because of certain deeds that you've done in this current life, your own behavior and your own actions, you got yourself cut off from the lineage. You got yourself cut off from the inheritance. So you won't enter that promised land proverbially, excuse me. All right. You won't enter that promised land. And that's what it's saying right here. All right. It says, surely they shall not see the land which I swore unto their fathers. So that means there's going to be certain Israelite people that's not going to make it. They're going to be, destroyed too before reaching the promised land. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, who he didn't have that spirit of fear. He had that spirit of the king, of the conqueror. All right. Because my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him and has followed me fully, him will I bring into the land wherein he went, and his seed shall possess it. So right here it's saying that, Caleb, you're going to go into the promised land and your seed will possess it. So what that is saying is that brothers who have a certain spirit of courage, and that's going to fight through all this, and that's going to eventually survive and make it, our offspring will be the ones to get that promised land and to live in America as their own people, with that new Jerusalem that a lot of us wish we were going to be able to experience. We won't be able to experience it. Just like I made in that tape, Blood on the Hands of David. David had to go to war. All right. He didn't get to build the temple. Moses had to go to war. He didn't get to see the, promised land. So a lot of you brothers today, especially if you want to listen to this tape, like we still all in the muck of the fuckery right now. We still inside the walls of Babylon. So like historically, this, these events that we talking about, they'll come somewhere down the line. We laying the foundation down for them, but we want to experience the benefit and the glory of all the sacrifices that are going to be made to get this to happen for so-called black people that's in the Americas. Because collectively, our people won't be in this all the time. Nothing in life stays the same. And even if the people dread change, the Most High naturally brings upon a change to where it'll be like a twinkling of an eye, because it'll be a gradual, natural, progressive change to where you didn't even notice the change. All right, let's continue. All right, let's see where we're going to go now. So ultimately what happened is all those different Israelites who were murmuring and complaining, a lot of them were slain and destroyed. All right. And, some of those giants, they were destroyed as well. So eventually, Caleb and Joshua, as we continue in Numbers, they led the people and they destroyed a lot of those giants and they started to conquer the land. All right. And they, reestablished their covenant. So let's kind of skip over to chapter 15 in Numbers. And we're going to start at verse 36. And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died as the Lord commanded Moses. So what we have right here is you had a lot of those rebels and those people who were the conspirators against Moses and Aaron. Eventually, the people were re-inspired and they came back together, and all those who murmured and they kept talking about we're going to go back to Egypt and all that. Let's see what the Most High said about them. So we'll go back up to verse 26. And it shall be forgiven all the congregation of the children of Israel and the stranger that sojourneth with them, seeing all the people were in ignorance. And if any soul sin through ignorance, then he shall bring a she-goat of the first year of a sin offering. So after all this murmuring and stuff, Moses started to reestablish culture and say, okay, look, this is how we got to go about doing things. All right. And a lot of that complaining and stuff, the people basically, atone for it, and they were trying to get ready to move past it. All right. And the priest shall make an atonement for the soul that sinneth ignorantly. Because remember, the people were very, very ignorant in the wilderness. So that's also why a little bit of compassion was shown to them, because they didn't know anything about a culture. So they were acting and behaving any old kind of way. But after the culture was reestablished, the art was established, the commandments were established, especially in Deuteronomy, on Moses' deathbed. That's when it was like, all right, the agreement has been made. Now y'all can't renege on the contract no more and say y'all didn't know. Okay. It says, but the soul that does basically go against this code, whether he be born in the land or a stranger, the same reproacheth the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment. That soul shall be utterly cut off. His iniquity shall be upon him. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. So this was a man that was gathering sticks going up on the Sabbath day. Basically, he was working on the Sabbath day. He was going against the code. They had just established the code. So remember, so-called black man, you may not have like a real code for your community and for your people now, but at one point you will. And for motherfuckers that break the code, what you willing to do? Are you willing to get on some Saudi Arabia shit and put on the fucking turbans and the fucking executioner mask and have a live fucking beheading so all the people can see it, so they'll know that we don't break rules for our new culture that we're going to establish in New Jerusalem? And anybody willing to go against them will be a recipient of draconian law. All right. So it says, and while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron and unto all the congregation. And they put him in ward, because it was not declared what should be done to him. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died, as the Lord commanded Moses. So what's going to happen is the higher power will declare that once this, new culture is starting to be reestablished by the American Hebrew, by the American Israelite, the so-called black man over here. Hey, man, look, we ain't go through all this hard work to reestablish it just to let somebody come muddy this shit right back up. No. You're going to have to, off with your head. Your TV turned off, nigga. Get the phone bill sent to you. Get a power bill sent to you. So now your TV turned off. Then it says, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a blue ribbon, or a ribbon of blue. So remember earlier I talked about how the Israelites, just throughout history and throughout the generations, how our people will wear fringes on some of our garments. And you would also see us adorned in the royal blue. Okay? So this is why you see that. You'll see certain Israelites, they'll have prayer shawls or whatever type of garment they're wearing, and it may have fringes, and it'll be adorned in the royal blue. So you'll have the white and the royal blue. Those are one of the, colors that we was associating with ourselves. Also, when we were in confederation with some of the Phoenicians during the time of King Hiram and King Solomon, not only were we wearing the royal blue to represent royalty and nobility, we also were wearing purple to represent royalty and nobility. All right. So that's where the royal blue comes from in Numbers chapter 15. All right. So if you see a Shemitic Israelite and, they got the royal blue, now you know where that comes from. It's historically recorded in Numbers. All right.